Ever feel like you're constantly battling huge crowds at, like, all the most popular tourist spots?
Totally.
Well, imagine if cities could use, some kind of high-tech tools to actually tackle that.
Yeah.
And that's what we're diving into today. We're talking smart tourist destinations.
Oh, cool.
It's like, think AI, but predicting crowd flow,
Wow.
or AR, but bringing historical sites like right there in front of you.
Amazing.
And you're super interested in how this all plays into sustainability, right?
Absolutely. It's like, how do we explore these amazing places without.
Yeah, yeah, loving them to death.
Exactly.
So before we get into the cool tech stuff, we got to like lay some groundwork here.
Okay.
What are some of the big numbers around tourism?
Well, you're not going to believe this, but in 2022, tourism, it represented 10.4% of the global GDP.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
And get this, that's only growing after,
After the pandemic, everyone's itching to travel again.
exactly. It's like a tourism boom.
Wow. Okay, so 10%, that's huge.
It's clearly about way more than just some fancy new tech gadgets. It's about figuring out how to deal with this like massive influx of people.
Yes, and sustainably too.
For sure. So like, what are some cities that are like really leading the charge here?
Well, Barcelona is a great example. They're really all in on becoming like a true smart tourism city.
How so?
They're using AI and big data to manage how tourists move through the city, and they can do it in real time.
Okay, wait, hold on a sec. Before we go any further, can we like break down big data for a second? It sounds kind of, I don't know, intimidating.
Yeah, totally. Imagine it like this. It's basically a massive collection of information, like where tourists go, how they use public transport, even stuff they're talking about on social media. It's like a lot.
So it's basically just like a ton of info.
Right. But here's the thing. Once you have all that data, you can process it, and that's when it gets really interesting. Because now you can analyze it, you can start to understand like tourist behavior, where the crowds will be, and even anticipate like potential problems before they happen.
So it's like a giant puzzle they're putting together, but the puzzle pieces are like bits of information about tourists.
And the end result is
A smoother experience for everyone.
exactly. It's about distributing tourists more evenly so it's not just a free-for-all.
So instead of everyone like cramming into, I don't know, the Sagrada Familia all at the same time,
Right.
Barcelona can use this data to kind of nudge people,
Yeah.
maybe check out some less crowded spots.
Yeah, or even suggest, hey, why not visit at a different time, when it's less busy?
That's actually really clever. So they're not just like reacting to problems after they happen, they're trying to get ahead of them.
And it's working. It's not perfect, but by redistributing tourists, even by like 20%, they've made things better for everyone.
Wait, 20%? That actually seems like a lot. It means people are open to these like suggestions and stuff.
Totally. And it benefits everyone. Visitors get to, explore more, and locals, they're not constantly battling these massive crowds.
Win-win. So we've talked about Barcelona. What about other cities? I know Amsterdam is also like really into this whole smart city idea, right?
Oh, yeah, big time. And while they have some things in common with Barcelona, Amsterdam is really focused on like mobility and keeping things from getting too crowded, especially around those canals.
The canals are definitely a tourist magnet. So how do they use tech to make things flow better?
So they've implemented this platform, a smart city platform, and it uses tech to, optimize their public
And
transportation.
make it super easy to get around.
Exactly. And if it's easy for tourists to take the tram or,
Hop on a bike.
yes, then it's a win for the city and for the environment.
Definitely. And I've heard that they're also doing some really cool stuff with like augmented reality for tours.
Oh, yeah. Have you seen that? It's amazing.
Imagine walking through the city and it's like, boom,
Yeah,
you're transported back in time.
I know. It's like history is like right there in front of you.
Exactly. So you could be strolling down the canal, and with an app, you can suddenly see what life was like there, I don't know, centuries ago.
Yeah, like the historical figures, major events, even soundscapes.
Wow.
It's really incredible. And, because it's all digital, it's not putting any extra stress on like fragile historical sites.
Which is amazing because we want to preserve these places, not love them to death.
Exactly.
So we've talked about managing crowds, making the tourist experience better. But how does, like, sustainability fit into all of this? We've touched on it a bit, but I'm curious to We dive a little deeper.
Oh, it's like totally key. Both those cities, Barcelona and Amsterdam, they see sustainability as, super important to their whole smart city thing.
Okay, so it's not just an afterthought. It's built into the plan from the beginning.
Exactly. We're talking big investments in like electric public transport, those trams, electric buses, and of course,
Bike sharing.
yes, all the bikes. They're everywhere.
Love it. It's so much nicer getting around a city without all those exhaust fumes.
Totally. And it's not just about encouraging people to choose the greener option, though that's a big part of it. Technology plays a much bigger role behind the scenes, too.
Right, right. Okay, so, what are we talking about here? Give me the techie details.
Okay, so think about it. Even if tourists are only in a city for a few days, millions of extra people put a huge strain on resources.
Yeah, that makes sense. More people, more water usage, more energy needed, more trash.
Exactly. So these cities are using real-time data to track all that.
To track, how much water people are using.
Yeah. And energy, it's all connected. They can see where people are concentrated at any given time.
Wow.
And they can actually adjust resource usage in those specific areas. It's pretty amazing.
So, if there's a huge festival happening in one part of the city.
They can make sure there's enough water pressure for everyone.
Oh, I see. So instead of just having, the same water pressure throughout the entire city, regardless of what's going on.
Exactly. It's about being smart, and using resources efficiently where they're actually needed most at that moment.
So it's like a giant citywide control system for, everything. Water, lights, trash.
Kind of, yeah. It's still early days, but that's the ultimate goal, to optimize everything based on what's happening in the city.
Wild. Okay, so this isn't just some futuristic dream then. Cities are actually doing this.
They are. Amsterdam, for example, they've managed to cut their carbon emissions in their historic center by 15% since they started using these smart initiatives.
15%.
Yeah.
That's massive. What specifically led to such a big change? What were the biggest factors?
It's a combination of things, really. Obviously, encouraging people to ditch their cars and use public transport or bikes helped a lot.
Right, right.
But that intelligent resource management system we talked about, adjusting water, lights, that kind of thing, that played a huge role, too.
Makes sense.
And then they've also implemented things like smart grids for energy.
Smart grids.
Yeah, they help distribute electricity more efficiently based on demand. And even, get this, sensors that track garbage bins.
No way.
So they know exactly when they need to empty them.
So no more overflowing bins just because it's a busy tourist season.
Exactly. It's all about working smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. There's another piece of the puzzle that's often overlooked.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the missing piece?
It's easy to get caught up in the tech, all the data and systems.
Yeah.
But these cities, they get that none of this works without the people who actually live there.
The residents.
Yes. They call it citizen engagement, and it's crucial.
So what does that look like in practice? How do they get residents on board with all of this?
It's about involving them every step of the way, really. Getting their feedback on ideas, letting them test out new technologies, before they're rolled out citywide.
Oh, so it's not just here's the new system we've implemented, deal with it.
Not at all. It's about making sure residents feel heard.
Because ultimately, it's their city.
Exactly. And they need to benefit from these changes, not just the tourists. And what's really interesting is this whole approach, combining technology with citizen engagement. It's not limited to Europe anymore.
Oh, really? So other parts of the world are taking notice and jumping on board.
Totally. It's becoming more of a global movement, which is really exciting to see.
So where else are these smart destination ideas popping up? Give me some examples.
Well, remember that whole augmented reality thing we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, using an app to bring history to life.
Exactly. That was a company called Facta Terre.
Right.
They're doing amazing things, especially with sustainable tourism.
Cool. So what have they done?
One of their coolest projects is actually in Tequila, Mexico.
Wait, as in tequila, the drink?
Yep, the one and only.
No way.
It's a town with so much history and culture.
And I imagine a lot of tequila tourism.
You already know it.
Right.
But that also comes with challenges, right? How do you manage so many visitors while preserving what makes the town special? And how do you make it sustainable?
That's a tough balance to strike. So what's their secret sauce? How are they tackling this?
They're using some similar tech to Barcelona and Amsterdam, AI to keep an eye on public spaces. But they're also really leaning into augmented reality, but in a really unique way.
Okay, I'm all ears. How's it different from what we've talked about before?
Imagine this. You're walking through fields of agave plants where they make tequila.
Okay, I'm with you.
And you're using an AR app to learn all about the traditional harvesting process.
So you can see how it was done like hundreds of years ago.
Exactly. It's like stepping back in time.
That's amazing. And because it's all digital, it doesn't put any extra strain on the actual agave fields.
Exactly. It's a win-win. Tourists get an incredible immersive experience.
And the local environment is protected.
It's a perfect example of how technology can make travel more meaningful, but also more sustainable.
It's like instead of just being a spectator, you become part of the story.
Right. And you're learning about the culture, the challenges of producing tequila sustainably. It's a much richer experience.
I love that. It's like bringing the story of a place to life in this really cool way.
Yeah.
It's incredible to see how much is being done to make tourism more sustainable. But I got to ask, it can't all be sunshine and roses, right?
Right.
There have to be some challenges, some potential downsides to consider too.
Yeah.
You're right. It's like, as much as I love this idea of tech, actually being used for good, for a change,
Yeah.
there's like got to be a flip side, right? Can't help but think about like all that data.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information about people.
Yeah.
Doesn't that like raise some privacy red flags?
Oh, for sure. That's a really valid concern. Anytime you're dealing with data, especially on this scale, and it's connected to travel, which is like a personal thing. Privacy has to be like the top priority.
Right. So are these cities like actually thinking about that? Or are they so caught up in the tech that they haven't really considered the implications?
No, they're definitely aware of it. They've actually built in some pretty strong safeguards from the beginning, it sounds like.
Okay, so what kind of like safeguards are we talking about? Like what are they actually doing to protect people's data?
So one of the most important things is they make the data anonymous.
Anonymous.
Yeah, so that means any info that could identify a specific person, it's removed.
So it's not like they can track your every move and know exactly who you are and what you're doing.
Exactly. Think of it like this. They might know, okay, someone visited this museum at this time.
But they don't know it was me.
Right. They have no idea.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But even if it's anonymous, it's still like a lot of data being collected, right?
Yeah.
So are they telling tourists about this? Or is it more of a, like, don't worry your pretty little heads about it kind of thing?
That's a really important point, that whole transparency thing.
Yeah.
Something they're still figuring out, to be honest.
Like how much to share, how to share it.
Yeah. Ideally, tourists would have, clear, easy to understand information.
About, like, what data is being collected.
Right, and what they're doing with it.
And maybe even, like, a choice.
Yeah.
To opt out if they're not comfortable.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Being able to use data effectively.
But also making sure tourists feel like they're, in control.
100%. Because it's one thing to use it for, managing crowds or making sure there's enough water, right?
Yeah.
But if it starts getting into, targeted ads based on where you are and what you're interested in.
That feels kind of creepy.
Totally. That's where things get, ethically murky.
Because if a city knows every little detail about you,
Yeah.
they could easily take advantage of that.
Exactly. And that's not cool. It's a conversation that needs to happen,
Totally.
Yeah.
It's almost like we need like a whole new set of rules just for data use in tourism.
Right.
Something that like protects everyone, not just the companies who are, trying to make a buck off of all this data.
100%. And, it all comes down to us how we decide to use these tools.
We have the power.
We do. And the cities we talked about, they're really trying to be responsible to make tourism better.
Not just like more profitable for some big corporation,
Yeah.
but actually better for everyone.
Exactly. For the planet, for the people who live there, for the tourists. It's a work in progress, but the potential is huge.
It's really cool to think about the possibilities though, right? Like imagine travel, but it's actually enjoyable. You're not fighting crowds. It's not destroying the planet.
I love that. And it's more than just sustainable. It's actually meaningful. You're connecting with the culture in a deeper way.
Exactly. And it's all thanks to, tech, but used responsibly.
Exactly. Tech for good.
So what's our takeaway here for all those listeners out there who are itching to travel again?
Well, I would say don't just book the first thing you see. Do a little digging. See if there's a smart destination out there that aligns with your values.
Because these places exist and they want you to visit. Just be a conscious traveler.
Yes, exactly. Be mindful of your impact.
Amazing. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today, from AI predicting crowds to AR bringing history to life.
It's been quite a journey. And we've learned how cities are using tech to create a more sustainable and meaningful way to explore the world.
Totally. So to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of smart, sustainable tourism.